Hey, what's happening, everyone? It is I, the man, the myth, the mustache, Tim here, and I've got a brand new video for you. Welcome to part 5 of What If Deku Had a Full Counter Quirk. Please sit back and relax because you are in for a treat. With that out of the way, let's get this story going, shall we? The students of 1A were putting on their hero outfits in preparation for their first lessons in heroics, which would be taught by All Might. Everyone was ecstatic. The students strutted onto ground gamma in costumes that expressed their personalities as well as their quirks. Midoriya wore a suit that was neither bright nor striking. It was a plain green outfit with a red utility belt loaded with throwing darts and marbles that he could use with this quirk. He also wore a smiling face mask and a hood with spikes that looked like All Might's haircut. The lesson for that day was straightforward. The heroes had to either capture the villains or recover the bomb from the villain team. The teams would be 2 against 2, and they would be chosen at random. For Midoriya, the randomness was both a luxury and a tragedy. He was paired with Uraraka, but he was up against Bakugo and Ida. The Spitfire's son and the Infinity Girl began discussing possible plans, while the explosive blonde and the armored student prepared their defenses. Ida could already sense that working out a plan with Bakugo would be difficult. He had to work with the guy who had threatened to kill him on the first day of class, and Ida could see this was going to be a disaster. Maybe he could cater to his pride. Bakugo, what can you tell me about Midoriya? You two seem to have a history, and any information you might have may help us win this exercise. Trying to mask his genuine excitement with rage, Bakugo glared at his partner. A damn nerd is what he is. He's been writing info on heroes since we were kids, so he's probably got a whole page on me. Then, maybe I should focus on fighting Midoriya. Fat chance! If anyone's getting that Padawan, it's gonna be me! Ida said nothing more on the subject. Bakugo stomped out of the room, leaving Ida alone to prepare for the upcoming battle. Outside the building, Uraraka and Midoriya were discussing possible plans, as well as the limits of their quirks. They believed the best course of action would be to get to the roof and work their way down. The test started and the timer began. The hero team went to an alleyway adjacent to the target building. Uraraka made Midoriya weightless and climbed onto his back. The green-haired boy utilized his parkour and his quirk to bounce between the walls to get to the top of the building. When they got to the roof, Uraraka released her quirk before entering the roof access door. Meanwhile, the villain team had very little synergy. Bakugo was exploring the lower floors, while Ida was left to guard the weapon. The armor-clad teen could hear footsteps above him. This confused him because the only space above him was the roof. A horrifying realization twisted in the pit of his stomach. Thinking quickly, Ida hid in a blind spot of the room's door. Ida spoke into a communicator to Bakugo. Bakugo, they're on the roof and they're making their way down. The hell? How did... Never mind. Hold them off until I get there. Ida fell silent as he heard the door open. Midoriya and Uraraka cautiously entered the room, noting that the only item within was the weapon. They were weary and confused, but stepped inside all the same. This doesn't feel right. Someone should be here. They might be searching the building, but if that's the case, why would they leave the weapon unguarded? The hero team debated their next steps when the door snapped shut. Ida continued to sprint around the room before striking out at Midoriya. The speedster's opponent was ready for him. Midoriya blocked the speeding kick with his forearm and countered the attack. Ida was thrown back, but landed on his feet. You were quicker than I thought you'd be, heroes, but I am not alone. My partner in crime shall be returning soon. Do you really think that you'll be able to handle the both of us? The hero team did their best to bite back their amused chuckles and recompose themselves as quickly as they could. we wouldn't back down even if you had an army. Exactly. No matter what, we will stop you, villain. The 2 versus 1 fight began in earnest. The rest of the 1A students were watching the match unfold. A sense of familiarity came into Todoroki's mind as he saw Midoriya's zigzagging movements and fighting style. Memories of watching his eldest brother and uncle sparring played in the back of Shoto Todoroki's mind. A subtle smile found its way to the young man's face. All Might kept a close eye on the fight to make sure that nothing was being taken too far. He too recognized how much young Midoriya had improved over the time he'd known him. The jade-eyed boy was quick, clever, and strong. He would be a good choice for All Might to pass his quirk onto, but the symbol of peace would be holding off on his final decision for a little while longer. Soon, an ear-splitting explosion took out an interior wall. Bakugo strode through the smoke, vengeance burning in his blood. The explosive blonde's eyes locked onto his childhood frenemy. "You're mine!" A spark of fear welled in Midoriya's chest as Bakugo charged at him. Midoriya skirted away from the blonde's explosive attack. He engaged Kacchan in close-quarters combat. Uraraka took advantage of the distraction and ran for the weapon. She made herself weightless, flinging herself at her target, but Ida was faster. The armor-clad teen picked up the bomb with ease and moved it across the room. The Infinity Girl tumbled to the ground. Uraraka picked herself up quickly to find Ida boasting and laughing mockingly. While Ida protected the weapon from Uraraka, the childhood friends clashed. Midoriya could read Bakugo's movements like an open book, while the blonde was struggling to keep up. Both young men were giving as good as they got. However, the green-haired boy had more overall combat experience compared to his blonde classmate. Bakugo faked with a right hook, then came in with an exploding left uppercut. Midoriya only just dodged the physical strike, but took the explosion head-on. Reflexively, Midoriya activated his quirk. Both students were forced apart from each other, skidding to a halt as they maintained their balance. Soot speckled the freckled teen's face, and the blonde's arm felt stiff from the recoil. Bakugo observed Midoriya, letting the counter-quirk user have his space. The explosive blonde hated to even consider it, but the Padawan wannabe was beating him. Midoriya was fighting like his dad. Bakugo recognized the moves from the news, and knew how Spitfire Kiyo fought at close range. A malicious smile came across Bakugo's face. He had a plan. Midoriya became concerned when his opponent didn't rush toward him a second time. One of Bakugo's gauntlets flared red. Midoriya wasn't sure what that meant, but he had a horrible feeling he'd soon find out. "The more I sweat, the bigger the explosions I can make. I assume you knew that already. But what you don't know is that my gauntlets aren't just for show. They can store up to a gallon of sweat each." "That's disgusting." "Shut up! At least my quirk can do real damage, unlike your C-3PO. Bakugo pulled back the clip and grasped the pin. He aimed the business end of his explosive gun at Midoriya. All Might ordered Bakugo to cease and desist, but the blonde would not listen. The pin was pulled, and an enormous explosion tore through the building. Uraraka's ears were ringing. She saw that over half the roof was blown off. The area where Midoriya stood was completely destroyed, and her teammate was nowhere in sight. Ida was very upset. "I can't believe you would do something like this! Not only did you put your own team in danger, but you could have destroyed the very thing we're trying to protect." "Can it, Tin Man? I took out my opponent while you were busy playing keep away." "At least I wasn't trying to kill my opponent. Your rivalry is blinding you from our objective." Yeah, whatever." Uraraka took this opportunity to make a run from the weapon. It was within her grasp before she was tackled. Bakugo pinned her down. Uraraka tried to fight back, but the blonde was stronger than her. Midoriya regained consciousness on the ground floor with spots in his vision and pain in his back. He was able to counter a majority of the explosion and redirect it upward. Midoriya didn't use enough power since he was still thrown from the building. He stood and assessed his situation. "We're running out of time. They've probably captured Uraraka at this point and they'll be on high alert. Ida's fast, but now that the room's terrain is uneven, he won't be able to reach top speed. Just in case..." Midoriya pulled out a sack of marbles from one of his belt pouches. "It's childish, but it could work. But how do I take care of Kacchan?" Back on the roof, Ida glared at his teammate from across the room. Bakugo was leaning against the weapon, his eyes scanning and listening for any sign of Midoriya. Uraraka sat not too far away from Ida. Since she was bound by the capture tape, she couldn't help Midoriya fight. But she couldn't just sit there and not provide some sort of backup. Midoriya called to Uraraka via their own communicator headsets. "Don't speak, just listen." Uraraka let out a startled eep, gaining Ida's and Bakugo's attentions. I saw a spider. Sorry. The villain team seemed to believe the lie. Both of them went back on guard, while Uraraka continued to listen. I'm gonna make a break for the weapon, but it'll be difficult to get past them. I need a distraction. Do what you can. I believe in you. Uraraka rated herself to be as annoying as humanly possible. She used her quirk on herself and started floating around the room. This obviously didn't go unnoticed by the villain team. Bakugo, could you get her down? Why me? Because I can't fly. Bakugo rolled his eyes and began chasing Uraraka around the room. Technically, since Uraraka wasn't fighting the villain team, she wasn't breaking any rules. Midoriya watched the spectacle briefly, noticing that Uraraka looked sick to her stomach. He slipped behind a half-standing pillar. Ida wasn't looking in his direction. The weapon sat unattended about 10 feet away from Midoriya, and the green-eyed teen estimated that Ida was just as far away. This would be cutting it close. Controlling his breathing and stealing his nerves, Midoriya sprinted for the weapon. The villain team heard the footfalls and reacted accordingly. Ida was quicker than his blonde teammate, closing the distance between himself and Midoriya within seconds. Midoriya spiked his bag of marbles on the floor. The glass-like beads scattered and Ida began to stumble. Midoriya took advantage of those precious seconds to counter Ida away. Bakugo launched himself at his rival with the intent to tackle him. Midoriya rolled under the attack, causing Bakugo to sail above him. The blonde sent an explosion at his opponent just as Midoriya reached out for the weapon. The buzzer sounded. The exercise was over. Midoriya's hand was on the weapon. But was it in time? All Might was unsure. Well, we'll review the footage later to determine the victor. Nice hustle, everyone! The two teams entered the observation room. Tensions were high between Midoriya and Bakugo as the class exclaimed their excitement about the match. But there wasn't time for praise. The training wasn't over yet. Midoriya wished Todoroki good luck as he and Shoji went out for their match. Todoroki and Shoji were the heroes, while Ojiro and Hagakure were the villains. The icy hot teen and his duply armed teammate reviewed the building layout they were given. How does your quirk work exactly? It'd be helpful to know so we can make a plan. Todoroki asked Shoji. One of Shoji's hands morphed into a mouth, startling Todoroki. I can replicate different body parts of my limbs, like eyes and ears, and hands, of course. What about yours? A little off guard with Shoji's quirk, Todoroki explained. Well, I can manipulate temperature. My right side can create ice, and my left can heat things up. Something about Todoroki's quirk description didn't feel complete to Shoji, but he didn't feel the need to press further. Shoji continued. Hagakure is invisible, but she won't be able to hide from my quirk. I know I'll be able to see where both of them are after stepping inside. Any ideas after I locate them? Todoroki just said coldly, I can freeze the building. They won't be able to move, and we could easily grab the weapon. Then it sounds like we have a plan. Their plan worked out perfectly. Shoji was able to pinpoint the exact floors Ojiro and Hagakure were on, and Todoroki gave them cold feet once Shoji had cleared the building. It was certainly the quickest match of all. All matches were complete, and the footage of the first match was reviewed. It turned out the match ended just before Midoriya's hand landed on the weapon. This was upsetting for Uraraka and Midoriya to hear, but they were still proud of how they did. Bakugo, on the other hand, was enraged. This wasn't a victory for him. The students had to wade their way through a sea of news reporters to get to class the following day. Everyone wanted to know what it was like to learn under the #1 hero. Aizawa told the press to stop being a nuisance to the students and to leave. This led to an uppity newswoman trying to get onto school grounds. The UA barrier door promptly slammed in her face. Aizawa informed his students they needed to pick a class representative and vice representative. He had no preference as to how they figured it out. Most of the students immediately exploded in excitement, wanting to be in charge. Ida was able to quell the masses with a brief speech and suggested the choice be up to a vote. Everything was tallied, and Yaoyorozu was elected as the class rep. Everyone was impressed by her intelligence and problem-solving skills in yesterday's training. Ida had the second most votes, becoming the vice rep. Midoriya was torn when it came to who he voted for. Ida was his friend, but he believed that Yaoyorozu seemed slightly more qualified for the position. Lunchtime rolled around. Midoriya and Todoroki were sitting with Uraraka and Ida. The four students were enjoying their meals, their conversations pleasant. "Hey, Midoriya, Todoroki, I've been wanting to ask you two something." Midoriya and Todoroki looked up from their food at Uraraka, cold soba noodles hanging from the half-and-half teen's mouth. "How long have you two known each other? You two seem really close." "I've noticed that as well," Ida said. "It seems out of character for you both to address others informally like you do each other." Midoriya was the first to reply. "Oh, we're cousins." Todoroki responded while slurping through noodles. "Second cousins. Technically. Our fathers are cousins and their fathers were brothers. We actually lived under the same roof for a couple of years." "Oh, so your families don't live together now? What changed?" Both boys fell silent at the question. They didn't like to talk about what happened when they were little kids. Todoroki shoved more noodles into his mouth, while Midoriya buried his face in his rice bowl. There was a shared look of confusion between Uraraka and Ida. Suddenly, an alarm sounded, informing the student body of a level 3 intruder alert. Everyone began to scatter as they ran for an exit. Students were shoving and trying to push past each other in their panic to escape the unforeseen danger. A level 3 intruder meant that someone, somehow, had infiltrated the campus, and no one knew what to do. Yitsuma was humming her lullaby, a second-nature task, as she searched through the filing cabinets of UA. Her psychokinesis made the cabinets open on their own as their contents floated to her. The pink-haired lady did find a few reports and schedules that looked helpful. She returned everything to its rightful place before leaving with the files in hand. The commotion a few floors down would most likely cover her escape. The student mosh pit situation was quelled and resolved thanks to the quick thinking of 1A's own class rep and vice rep. After discovering the alert was caused by the media, Yaoyorozu made a megaphone to inform everyone, while Ida lifted her above the crowd on his shoulders. She requested that everyone return to their classrooms while the news crews were dealt with. Mineta glared jealously at Ida, wishing it was his head between Yaoyorozu's thighs. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Shigaraki entered the bar hideout via Warp Gate. He was confused when he only saw Kurogiri waiting inside. "Where's Yitsuma? She should have been back by now."
"There were complications with her exit. I'll go retrieve her."
The warping villain disappeared in a flourish of dark clouds. Shigaraki took a seat on a bar stool, his legs bouncing anxiously. He began to fear the worst. Yitsuma had entered the young man's life at the same time Kurogiri did. Both were made to be his protectors, but his bond with Yitsuma ran a bit deeper. He saw the pink-haired woman like his mother, or at least a mother-like figure. Shigaraki wouldn't know what he'd do if he lost either of his guardians. Dark clouds appeared at the bar. Kurogiri and Yitsuma emerged from the warp gate, the little brother holding his big sister's hand. Shigaraki was relieved that his companions had returned and didn't appear hurt. Yitsuma pulled a folder out of her robes. "These should be great use to us, Tamura." And that's our video for the day, so thank you all for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed it. Before I go, there's a little bit of housekeeping I'd like to go over with you. First, We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing pleasures. All the information you'll need is right below in the description, so please feel free to check out all the other incredible content and projects our team creates. Second, on behalf of We the Celestials, I want to thank everyone who worked on the production of today's awesome content. Their details are also in the description below. That's it for today's video, so thank you all for watching and have an amazing day. And as always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and stay awesome. This has been Tim, Mustache out.